As Jesus rode into Jerusalem, he never said that it would be safe. As palms were waved and garments strewn, it wasn't a party, even though it looked like one. As his final week began and then progressed, we witnessed what it means to be in a brave space. So as a community, we enter our time together with brave hearts, trusting that Jesus is with us. Together, we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars, and we all cause wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other toward truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. The space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be. But it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Divine spark from sacred dark, symbol of our holy intent, illuminate this hour. I invite you to take a few breaths as we center ourselves in silence. Come, O come, Holy One. Come through the streets, come into the house. Come to find a space beside us at the table. Come to challenge our answers about
why tragedy comes, why poverty increases, why we are afraid.
Come, O Holy One, speak to us in the silence.
With wisdom greater than ours, with love deeper than ours, with change wider than ours.
Come, O Holy One, fill in these stories with your wisdom, with your love, with your change, so that we might rely on your answers, here and now. Amen. I invite you to sing this 3 times through.
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead. He was going up to Jerusalem. He approached Bethphage and Bethany. The hill there was called the Mount of Olives. Jesus sent out 2 of his disciples. He said to them, "Go to the village ahead of you. As soon as you get there, you will find a donkey's colt tied up. No one has ever ridden it. Untie it and bring it here. Someone may ask you, 'Why are you untying it?' If so, say the Lord needs it." Those who were sent ahead went and found the young donkey. It was there just as Jesus had told them. They were untying the colt when its owners came. The owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." Then the disciples brought the colt to Jesus. They threw their coats on the young donkey and put Jesus on it. As he went along, people spread their coats on the road.
Jesus came near the place where the road goes down the Mount of Olives. There the whole crowd of disciples began to praise God with joy. In loud voices they praised him for all the miracles they had seen. They shouted, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. May there be peace and glory in the highest heaven."
feast of unleavened bread called the Passover was near. The chief priests and teachers of the law were looking for a way to get rid of Jesus. They were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, who was called Iscariot. Judas was one of the 12 disciples. He went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard. He talked with them about how he could hand Jesus over to them. They were delighted and agreed to give him money. Judas accepted their offer. He watched for the right time to hand Jesus over to them. He wanted to do it when no crowd was around.
Then the day of unleavened bread came. That was the time the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John on ahead. Go, he told them, prepare for us to eat the Passover meal. Where do you want us to prepare for it? They asked. Jesus replied, when you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him to the house he enters. Then say to the owner of the house, the teacher asks, where is the guest room? Where can I eat the Passover meal with my disciples? He will show you a large upstairs room with furniture already in it. Prepare for us to eat there. Peter and John left. They found things just as Jesus had told them, so they prepared the Passover meal.
When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles took their places at the table. He said to them, I have really looked forward to eating this Passover meal with you. I wanted to do this before I suffered. I tell you, I will not eat the Passover meal again until it is celebrated in God's kingdom. After Jesus took the cup, he gave thanks. He said, take this cup and share it among yourselves. I tell you, I will not drink wine with you again until God's kingdom comes. Then Jesus took bread. He gave thanks and broke it. He handed it to them and said, this is my body. It is given for you. Every time you eat it, do this in memory of me. In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup. He said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. It is poured out for you. But someone here is going to hand me over to my enemies. His hand is with mine on the table. The Son of Man will go to his death, just as God has already decided. But how terrible it will be for the one who hands him over. The apostles began to ask one another about this. They wondered which one of them would do it.
They also started to argue. They disagreed about which of them was thought to be the most important person. Jesus said to them, the king of the Gentiles hold power over their people, and those who order them around call themselves protectors. But you must not be like that. Instead, the most important among you should be like the youngest. The one who rules should be like the one who serves. Who is more important? Is it the one at the table or the one who serves? Isn't it the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. You have stood by me during my troubles, and I give you a kingdom just as my Father gave me a kingdom. Then you will eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on the throne, judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to shift all of you disciples like wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon. I have prayed that your faith will not fail. When you have turned back, help your brothers to be strong. But Simon replied, Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. Jesus answered, I tell you, Peter, you will say 3 times that you don't know me, and you will do it before the rooster crows today. Then Jesus asked the disciples, did you need anything when I sent you without a purse, bag, or sandals? Nothing, they answered. He said to them, but now if you have a purse, take it, and also take a bag. If you don't have a sword, sell your coat and buy one. It is written, he has counted among those who have committed crimes. I tell you that what is written about me must come true. Yes, it is already coming true. The disciples said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords. 2 swords are enough," he replied.
Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives. His disciples followed him. When they reached the place, Jesus spoke. "Pray that you won't fall into sin when you are tempted," he said to them. Then he went a short distance away from them. There he got down on his knees and prayed. He said, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup of suffering away from me. But do what you want, not what I want." An angel from heaven appeared to Jesus and gave him strength. Because he was very sad and troubled, he prayed even harder. His sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. After that, he got up from prayer and went to the disciples. He found them sleeping. They were worn out because they were very sad. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up. Pray that you won't fall into sin when you are tempted."
While Jesus was still speaking, a crowd came up. The man named Judas was leading them. He was one of the 12 disciples. Judas approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you handing over the Son of Man with a kiss?" Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen. So they said, "Lord, should we use our swords against them?" One of them struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "Stop this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him.
Then Jesus spoke to the chief priests, the officers of the temple guard, and the elders. They had all come for him. "Am I leading a band of armed men against you?" he asked. "Do you have to come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courtyard, and you didn't lay a hand on me. But this is your hour. This is when darkness rules."
Then the men arrested Jesus and led him away. They took him into the high priest's house. Peter followed from far away. Some people there started a fire in the middle of the courtyard. Then they sat down together. Peter sat down with them. A female servant saw him sitting there in the firelight. She looked closely at him. Then she said, "This man was with Jesus." But Peter said he had not been with him. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw Peter. "You are also one of them," he said. "No," Peter replied, "I am not." An hour later, another person spoke up. "This fellow must have been with Jesus," he said. "He is from Galilee." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Peter was really hip. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked right at Peter. Then Peter remembered what the Lord had spoken to him. "The rooster will crow today," Jesus said. "Before it does, you will say 3 times that you don't know me." Peter went outside. He broke down and cried.
There were men guarding Jesus. They began laughing at him and beating him. They blindfolded him. They said, "Prophesy, who hit you?" They also said many other things to make fun of him. At dawn, the elders of the people met together. These included the chief priests and the teachers of the law. Jesus was led to them. "If you are the Messiah," they said, "tell us." Jesus answered, "If I tell you, you will not believe me. And if I asked you, you would not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the mighty God." They all asked, "Are you the Son of God then?" He replied, "You say that I am." Then they said, "Why do we need any more witnesses? We have heard it from his own lips."
of people are talking about sort of the death of the church. Like it's this big horrible thing that we're on the precipice of doom. There's a megachurch pastor who even did this sort of stunt where he drove up to his church on a hearse and then gave a sermon about how will Christianity have a funeral or a resurrection, and it was just, we have this posture in a lot of Christianity that we see the numbers changing, at least in North America, and shifting, the demographics shifting, and people kind of freak out and say, well, the church is dying, and unless we do all of this change, then it's gonna die. And I can't help but think to myself, maybe a little death and resurrection is exactly what the church needs right now. Maybe this means that for Christians in North America, we're learning that Christianity isn't about empire. Maybe our empire building days are over, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the church isn't about power and money and numbers. Maybe being the church is about something else. And maybe dying to those old ways of doing things is exactly what needs to happen. So in thinking about death and the death of the church, I'm not afraid of the church dying. Death is something that empires worry about. It's not something gardeners worry about. It's not something resurrection people worry about. So if the church in North America needs to die to some of its old ways, then let it die. Maybe this is just God creating something new. That's what I'm optimistic about. So when I'm thinking about death, I'm thinking about resurrection.
So before we get into the 2+, I would like to share a reflection from the group that puts together these videos. Okay, so this is a reflection of Called to a Community of Grace as it was, is, and is becoming. What if the church wasn't afraid of dying? Death can be sad and painful, but not always. The key to a good death is often preparation and healthy amounts of both grieving and celebration. For some, death comes as a welcome relief by both the person who is ready to pass and those who have done their work to prepare to let that person pass, knowing that the gifts they gave us will live on. Call it a death or call it what you like, the church is being forced to change. And as family systems theories teach us, when one element of a system changes, the whole system must change to create a response. For the past several centuries, the church has seen its role as standard bearer for what is right, judge of what is wrong, comforter of those who mourn, and shepherd of souls toward heaven. My best guess is that the church will continue to be all these things in some form or fashion, but perhaps in the new incarnation of faith, we can be other things as well. Perhaps we can be more humble about our own failings. Perhaps we can be more forgiving of the failings of others. Perhaps we can seek to comfort those outside our walls as well as those inside. And perhaps we'll learn to shepherd souls down a path of discipleship on their way to whatever their final destination might be. I'm happy to leave much of the presumed role of the church in God's hands. I do not need to make all things right. I can't. We can't. But what we can do is just as needed. We can love other people in very concrete ways as we live out the neighbor narrative, as Brueggemann put it. I'm tired of the other narrative, the one that says that we must lose in order for others to win. No one should have to lose. I just didn't know how to love in a way that was unafraid to win or lose as long as we did it together. So join with me, friends, Jew and Gentile, Christian and Muslim, conservative and liberal, slave and free, and let us celebrate together our mutual citizenship in God's kingdom. What's the role of the church? Well, we live in a very broken world. So let's find out what our role by healing wounds, offering friendships, and sharing food, and following Christ on the road might look like together. So for 2+ today, we are going to have 10 minutes. Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered because of me, I will be there. So your questions today in your groups, and we're not gonna bounce them back and reflect on them, but this is in your groups for 10 or 15 minutes. And you can do one or multiple of the questions. What is the church willing to give up its life for and be crucified for? What gives you hope for a resurrection of the church? And combined with that second one, what might that resurrection look like? Make sense? Questions are going to stay up there. 10 or 15 minutes, I'll call you back with prayer time. Jesus, sometimes we are in the crowd. Sometimes we are the ones who are cheering. Sometimes we're the ones who are jeering, and sometimes we're just the ones trying not to be seen. Jesus, sometimes we are the ones at the edge of the road. We need your presence and your touch. Hear our prayers spoken silently in our hearts and out loud for this community here gathered both online and in person.
For Pat Wilson's surgery in the upcoming week.
For Pat's surgery coming up this week.
For Lily, so her face heals.
For Lily, so her face heals.
For Lauren and Susan receiving treatment for cancer.
For Lauren and for Susan receiving cancer treatments.
For the people of Ukraine.
For the people of Ukraine.
For the refugees.
For refugees.
Pray for caregivers.
For caregivers.
For Tony, who is struggling with addiction.
For Tony, who is struggling with addiction.
For the many ways we hold and experience grief.
For the many ways that we hold and experience grief.
May we use our money wisely.
May we use our money wisely.
For all those who will benefit from the clothing that we are donating today.
For those who will benefit from the clothing that we are donating today.
may we all be thankful.
May we be thankful.
For Mo and Jim as they continue to redefine what their life will look like.
For Mo and Jim as they continue to redefine what their life together will look like.
For peace.
For peace. Jesus, you entered the city as a poor man, not in style, but simply. Yet you still caused an uproar and questions everywhere. You drew the expectations of a hungry crowd and brought buried conflicts to light. May we, who are sometimes swayed by the crowd's approval and who often avoid conflict for fear of what it will cost us, help us to hold fast the gospel of peace and justice and to follow faithfully in your way of compassion and solidarity with those who are poor and excluded, wherever it may lead us. Amen. Our closing song is called Ride On King Jesus. It's from Olivet Nazarene University Proclamation Gospel Choir. Cannot be memorized. Very difficult. It's going to be a video, and it actually bookends the Hosanna from earlier in worship. So I would encourage you, if you choose to, it's super simple to follow if you want to sing with them. It's a little harder to clap, but you can give it a go. No, we're not going to do that. You can stand and you can wave palms.
The clapping will go awry.
The clapping could go awry. You're absolutely right with this one. But palms and standing and singing, if you choose to, will definitely work out.
These are for waving joyfully, not smacking the pastor as she walks past him.
That's a good point.
Some of you have a misperception.
If you can't see the citizens, have no clap. Here we go. Boom.
Ride on, King Jesus. No man cannot hinder thee. Ride on, King Jesus. Ride on. No man cannot hinder thee.
This is a vision of the way it can be, the way it should be. Shouts of welcome, a joyful procession, a community celebrating together. The same vision is offered to us today.
We can welcome Christ into our lives. We can celebrate his transforming power.
How swiftly things changed back then. How swiftly we too can be distracted.
May we hold fast to his vision of goodness, peace from the practice of justice, equality from the practice of respect.
As this week unfolds,
We will not ourselves be overtaken by God's love. We will pour it back out into the world.
who's the church?
We're the church.
Go and carry the light